I'm Bill Youngs. I'm a history professor at Eastern Washington University. I'm now completing my 52nd year there. Spokane Falls was there long before earliest white settlement and back probably thousands of years. Indians by the hundreds, maybe by the thousands, would come there regularly and fish, particularly salmon. Back in those days, the salmon from the Pacific went clear up to the falls, and pretty much that's as far as they could get. The falls were just too big for leaping over. When James Glover, the founder of Spokane, the first person that tried to create a town there, came, he was attracted by the falls also, but not so much for the fish as for the power that it would generate. In those days, water power was the way to go, and he was looking for a town site around the inland Northwest. And when the town began to be formed in the year 1870s, they put up mills very, very quickly, and that became sort of the obsession with building up the town, building up the mills. And at the same time, other people coming through realized how beautiful these sites were. In the distance, even from 5 and 10 miles away, you'd begin to hear the falls as you got closer, and then you'd see these magnificent falls. It's really an amazing sight, but the beauty of it was quite lost over the next few years with the building of factories and mills and then railroads beside the falls. And people basically forgot the falls were there. Well, it's hard to imagine today how important the railroads were coming into a town. Now we're used to their being there already. The railroads essentially put Spokane on the map. 1880s, 1890s, more and more railroads. That resulted in prosperity at lots of levels. For one thing, it brought people in, made it easier to get there. And then beyond that, though, just various products, basically anything you can think of that could be manufactured or brought out of the earth could be made much more valuable if you had a train to carry it somewhere. And with the railroads, of course, came railroad tracks, obviously, and a lot of culverts and a lot of bridges across the falls. If you were to look at the falls 60 or 70 years ago, you would see, say you were standing in downtown Spokane, there'd be a trestle about 6 or 8 wide going across basically where now Spokane Falls Boulevard is. And so in a variety of ways, the railroad saved Spokane, but in a sense they destroyed the river. At least they destroyed a person's ability to really settle down and appreciate the river. At the same time, the town was growing up, and with the growth of Northtown, which was the first big shopping center outside of Spokane, and other shopping centers basically sucked a lot of the business out of downtown Spokane. And so you had a town that had already lost the beauty of the river, and then it lost its kind of business lure to bring people downtown. And in the 1950s, a number of people, particularly business people, that had stores downtown were finding that no one was coming, that most of the trade was going out to the suburbs. And there was obviously an economic interest in not only bringing people back for businesses, but also making the downtown physically more attractive. King Cole was hired to be an urban planner, and a lot of ideas were thrown around about what to do. How could you do that? And then someone came up with the idea of the World Fair, and King Cole loved that, and he ran with it. Well, it was very ambitious to try to start a World Fair in Spokane, and moving forward was an incredibly difficult thing. As you look at the various pieces of the puzzle, it almost seems impossible that they could put it together. The people were for it, and luckily with this subterfuge, so to speak, of the B&O tax, they got the money in Spokane to make it go forward.
The Great Pacific Northwest begins right here.
World's Fair 74. There'd be a lot less people to worry about, and a lot more people who care.
We were, up to that time, the smallest city in the world ever to have a World Fair. Once you have a fair, you have to have a theme for the fair.
Spokane, Washington, site of the World Environmental Fair.
World's Fair 74.
Celebrating the birth of tomorrow's fresh, new environment.
Come share a world of
Spokane's Expo 74 was the first environmental World Fair. Beautifully, the idea of the environment, which was worldwide with the first Earth Day, also, what better scene, what better site for a World Environmental Fair where you are actually cleaning up an environment. There was, of course, first a tearing down and then a building up. You couldn't just flick your fingers and have all those railroad trestles disappear. The train stations were very controversial at the time of the fair because on the one hand, they wanted to have the fair by the falls and they needed that land for pavilions for the fair. On the other hand, railroad enthusiasts in town particularly were just begging to save the stations, and there was a big movement to not remove the stations. A kind of compromise came out of the Great Northern. There's that beautiful clock tower that almost looks like a grand Italian tower or something like that. That was saved, and luckily it was freestanding. One of the great outcomes of saving the Northern Pacific Tower is it became a centerpiece for counting down the time to the fair. Each day, someone would climb up to the top of the tower and they would hang big numbers on the side of it. Nixon was in the middle of the Watergate scandal at the time. He flew in on Air Force One, they landed it at Fairchild. He was there to open the fair.
On this day, acting in my capacity as President of the United States, it is my high honor and privilege to declare Expo 74 officially open to all the citizens of the world.
The opening ceremony, something like 80,000 people witnessed it. A lot of people came from around the country and around the world. When you went into the fair, you had quite a choice of pavilions, both industry, for example, the Ford Pavilion, and also different countries. Each exhibit had certain attractions, but the pavilion, of course, was the centerpiece for the fair. There was an IMAX theater built into the pavilion and this wonderful film about the environment.
That's the way it should be.
It actually had some sort of fabric cover all around it. And you don't see that today because it was torn by the wind. And then they replaced the whole thing a year or two after the fair, and it too got torn by the wind. And finally they began looking at the wiring and saying, you know, it kind of looks nice the way it is. And so that's what you see down there today. One could go on forever about the different exhibits. Just the fairgrounds themselves were fun. You couldn't go far without some sort of entertainment. In the evenings, it was said that some of the best entertainment in the country, maybe in the world, was in the Opera House. There was just a variety of things to do, but maybe one of the most popular of all was to stand on the bridges over the falls, which had been put in for the World Fair. The river was thundering down and spray would be coming over the bridge. Of course, that's the great place to look at the falls today. One reporter talked about just how exciting it was to see people's faces and how wonderful it was to see them enjoying the environment. He said that you go there and somehow you come away cleansed and renewed.
Today we speak of the environment in terms, as we should, of cleaning up the air and the water. Another aspect of environment is what this magnificent Expo is going to leave as a legacy. It will leave, I trust, some of these beautiful buildings. It will leave a 100-acre park in the heart of the city of Spokane, which was once a blighted area. Beyond those material things, it will leave something else, and that is a new spirit. The idea did not come from Washington, D.C. It came from Washington State. Those who worked on it, those who conceived it, and most of the money that went into it came from the people, and to the people of this state, we give you the congratulations for a magnificent achievement.